Welcome to Crime Most Scots, a bi-weekly podcast about crimes committed in Scotland. Kick off your shoes, fire up the pike pipes and the haggis, and enjoy the stories.
This is episode 1, the Fishy Love Triangle.
Fishy?
Yes. As in fish.
As in fishing?
As in fishing, yes.
Okay.
So, this is our first episode, so I thought I would give you a little bit of context on Scotland and where it fits in to the United Kingdom.
Okay, yes.
So, for a wee island, the UK has a complicated past. In fact, what do we even call the place in the first instance? Great Britain, UK, or the British Isles? So in geography terms, the island is referred to as the British Isles. And in 1707, we saw the Act of the Union between the two kingdoms of England and Scotland, and voila, we have Great Britain. And in 1801, Ireland changed from its colonial partnership, I think partnership is a very dubious term, and that led to the UK. And finally, in 1922, once the states, the counties in Southern Ireland seceded, that left the 6 northern counties as part of Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England are now the United Kingdom. So this is what we have in its current form.
Yeah, so you have, yes, all those countries. The Scotland, Wales, and Scotland are Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Plus Ireland is British Isles. But plus Northern Ireland is the UK and Northern Ireland.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Ireland is independent.
Yes, Republic of Ireland just
Yes.
happens to be on the bottom.
Yes.
It's very much an independent country. Nothing to do with them. I mean, they have the euro.
Yeah, it's a European country, but
Yeah.
it's independent from
Mm-hmm.
the UK, yes.
So, despite being a United Kingdom, Scotland has its own laws. So, for all our cases, they'll take place under the devolved Scots law. In fact, even some of the laws precede the 1707 Act of the Union. We've still got, in Scots law, we still have old, archaic stuff that's still part of the Scots law that happened before the Act of the Union happened and before the 97 devolution.
Yes, before 97, when the devolution happened, the systems were already separate.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What 97 gave is it confirmed that difference and it added a little bit of tax control
Mm-hmm.
to Scotland, but within 1% or something.
Yeah.
Not much.
So for example, depending on where you are in the UK, it depends on what laws happen. So if you're buying a house in Scotland, it's very different from buying a house in England. You offer asking you give a sealed bid to a price that's over what the asking price is.
It's blind auctions.
Yes, a sealed system bid, and which means there's no gazumping or anything, and it's simple. It tends to be all done through a solicitor.
You have to explain what gazumping is.
Gazumping is, in England, you can buy a house and think you have it, and then a third party can come along and offer a higher amount, and the owners of the house can actually accept the higher offer.
Oh yes, in Scotland, once you have received
Yes.
an offer that is more than what you ask, you have to accept it.
Exactly.
Like
So,
here, it's the same in France and
yeah.
in Spain.
So as I was saying, thanks to devolution in 97, Scotland got more control back from Westminster, and in May 1999, the Scottish Parliament reconvened after, the 1707 Act of Union, and that's how, in fact, the first opening of Parliament was. It was a continuation of what it was. I mean, I think it would have been, don't know what building it would have been in. I don't even know if it would have been in Edinburgh. But so
No,
this is
the Parliament was built after the Parliament was recreated. The building was created after that.
Yes, it was
When
devolution was,
it? Oh, wasn't it the...
devolution was 97
Yes.
and the Parliament was 99.
Yes.
So it's 2 years to build.
Were they sitting at the old courthouse
Could be.
on the Royal Mall?
It could be.
I think
Because
it
I
might
mean
have
that's
been
just
there.
that would have been just up the road.
Yeah.
So all of the Scots law, Scots parliamentary business is done at the Scottish Parliament in Holyrood, which is just physically down the road from Edinburgh Castle, and is currently the SNP have the majority. It's a lot slimmer than it used to be, and the building is. It was a very bugbear at the time because the price ballooned up and it took a long time to complete.
Yes.
In criminal cases, Scotland has a 15-person jury that decides by majority, and you can't choose between a judge and a jury trial.
You can?
No,
No, you can't?
No, not in
It's
Scotland.
not possible in Scotland?
No.
Weird.
And also, probably the most important difference in Scots law is when they're handing down the verdicts, you have 3 different verdicts. You have guilty, you have not guilty, and you have not proven. So neither side has proven the case one way or another.
It's kind of the same in France where you have guilty, not guilty, and non-lieu.
Mm-hmm.
But non-lieu normally happens before the trial. It's not the result of a trial.
I think Scots law is quite similar to French law. So yeah, you have this third case that you don't have anywhere else in the UK. So there are justices of the peace courts and there are sheriffs' courts. And for our cases in general, we'll be in the High Court, which is the upper part of the sheriff's court. There's dedicated high courts in the bigger cities like Aberdeen, Glasgow, and Edinburgh. And then in the smaller, they'll if there's a big case in say Elgin or something, then they'll kind of like take over the sheriff's court for that one case, and all appeals are put forward to the High Court. Public prosecution is undertaken by the Procurator Fiscals, the PFs. Normally they're involved at the end of police investigations, except in murder cases where they're brought into the loop as the investigation goes on. That's why you see like programmes in Shetland, you see the PV quite quickly, the Procurator Fiscal quite quickly.
The PFs.
Yes, PFs, sorry, yes. So they're basically the equivalent of the DA services in the US. Scotland policing is carried out by Police Scotland. That was formed in 2013 from the 8 regional police forces. So all in all, it's pretty much like every other, police service. But I wanted to give everyone outside the UK just not everybody's going to know who a Procurator Fiscal is. And we definitely do things separately than in England. If you have a law degree, then you'd have to make up an equivalency if you wanted to kind of like sit as a judge, not a judge, sit as a prosecutor for England. In Scotland.
Or in Scotland, yeah.
In Scotland. So that was a quick snapshot of how we do things in Scotland. When I say we, I'm not there anymore, so I guess it's how they do things in Scotland. So, to our first case. For our inaugural case, we're looking at a crime that's a landmark in Scotland. And like a lot of murders, involves matters of the heart. When a lonely fisherman's wife seeks the warmth in the arms of another, but then decides she's made an awful decision, things turn deadly. And in the end, it was the last hanging in Scotland. But why is it seen as controversial?
And when was that?
Well, I'll tell you. It's further down. It's in the early 60s.
Early 60s, okay.
Yeah.
Is that the last capital punishment?
It's the second last. It's the second last in the UK.
Yes, but okay. So hanging was a normal capital punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because there could have been more.
Murder was automatically
automatic hanging.
Murder with a gun was automatically. I a capital punishment. So if it was deemed to be violent, not a gun and a knife as well, I think.
But there was only one method.
Yes,
because in the US, for example, you have electric chair, you have
it's only hanging.
injections. In France, I think you had either execution squad or hanging. I think that's the two that were used, but one was more used for military cases. Okay, so it was the second last in the UK, last in Scotland.
Yeah. So I chose this incident because it's an important case, but it's also in Aberdeen. This is a city where we met and where we were married. Aberdeen is located in the northeast of Scotland. It's on the coast between the rivers Dee and Don, and it's the third biggest city in Scotland. And a bit of context for those unfamiliar with Scotland, it's a little over an hour away from Balmoral Castle, built by Queen Victoria, where she and Albert visited and made shit like tartan popular again. Everything that you associate with the idea of Scotland normally comes via the Victorian Scotch revival period. There's nothing really legitimate or...
Yeah, because before that they didn't have tartans. They had togas more than tartans.
It was more like rough tweed.
Yeah.
It wasn't like colourful, garish bullshit. You know, comedian Bill Bailey once said Aberdeen is so grey that even the rainbows are monochrome.
Yes.
The city centre buildings are predominantly granite, which is silver and shimmering in the sunlight, but there's not an awful lot of sunshine in Aberdeen. And today the city is a hub for North Sea oil. You know, it's very metropolitan, but back when our case took place in 1963, the city was a fishing town. And all three of the love triangle members were kind of like working in the fishing sector.
Yeah, now the fishing is Peterhead. Or Peterheath.
Yeah, there is still a fish section in Aberdeen. I've worked
in the harbour. It's too
yes.
expensive for the fishing boats.
Yeah, well, there's still a fishing business. Okay. There's still fish processing done down in...
Oh, yes, down the road.
Down in Market Street.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We used to drive past.
Yes. Oh, you could always smell it. Ye gads. I mean, I love fish, but nobody likes the smell of old fish. Anyway, so who were the three involved in this tragic incident? The married couple of the triangle were Thomas and Margaret Guillen, who had been married since 1957 and had 2 children. Things were not all sunshine and roses with the Guillens. In fact, Thomas was not the father of Margaret's second child. So the marriage, carried the burden of having one partnership at sea for a long time. And so I'm pretty sure that that's not the first time that would have happened, that there was siblings who didn't have the same father. We know things were really over between the two of them because Margaret had consulted a solicitor for a divorce, but Thomas refused it. You know, it's December 1962, we're not really looking at women leaving their husbands that often in Scotland.
Well, she could have left him anyway, but it wouldn't have been an amicable divorce, in which case it takes a lot longer and more complicated.
I don't think she would have had the gumption to do it, So in December 1962, she got a new job at John R. Stevenson's fish curing factory, which is obviously where they smoke the fish.
On the other side of the river. There used to be a smoking place on the other side of the Dee.
Yeah. And there's all up that east coast, there's places.
Oh, yeah.
Smoked fish is very, very popular. You have kippers for breakfast, which is smoked haddock for breakfast. What a repugnant idea of having something that fragrant. But, it's lean protein, I guess, if you're looking
at it's probably good for you health-wise. But
exactly.
It's hardcore for breakfast.
That is hardcore. But an Arbroath smoky is still very popular. And Arbroath's just down the road. It's still part of Aberdeenshire. And it's affa fine, as the locals would say. So, Margaret got this job in this place where she hooked up with a work colleague, Henry Burnett. And things escalated quickly from here. So by the end of May 1963, Margaret had moved out of the marital home with the youngest child.
Oh, she left two of them?
Yeah, she had two. She had the first kid
she had
was
three
with
kids,
the husband.
but she left two with her husband.
No, she had two kids.
I thought she had three, with the middle one not being from the husband.
No, she had two children.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So she moved out of the marital home and with the youngest child, with the one that wasn't the husband's, and she moved in with Bernard. So Henry was 21. He just, started his adult life. But he'd already kind of showed signs of being a bit of a troubled soul. He pinched his mother's sleeping tablets and had attempted suicide. In a foreshadowing of the case, he also threatened his two sisters with a knife.
Nice.
So he was kind of complicated for being so young. He's already, tried to commit suicide, and he's, obviously quite unstable. Was it a case of buyer's remorse? It's not surprising that Margaret soon had a change of heart on moving in with Bernard. She had made the decision to return back to her estranged husband. And we all know that leaving an unstable partner is the time when the violence can occur. She knew things were going to be difficult when she left, as Henry had taken to locking Margaret in when he had gone out, because he had this premonition that Margaret was going to leave. And I mean, you can see from the outside, if this had been a modern relationship, he would have been looking through her phone at the messages.
Yes, probably, yes.
So
and having a spy app on her phone as well.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
I mean, from the outside, Margaret was in a really desperate situation. She was caught between a rock and a hard place, so that's why she decided that, the dude was a bit too much like hard work. So she decided to go back to her husband. So Margaret was canny, though. She decided that she might need help when she was leaving him. So she took Georgina Catanaugh, a friend of hers, when she broke the news to Bernard, which was indeed a wise move. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure she would still be here if she hadn't taken her friend with her. Because Henry, as you can imagine, did not take the news well, and he exploded in anger. And he managed to get between Margaret and Georgina, push Georgina out the way, and then had a knife at Margaret's throat, shouting, "Margaret, Margaret, you're not going to leave me." And, Georgina's outside hammering on the door, trying to get Bernard to let Margaret go. And I don't know what, he suddenly snapped for some reason and stormed out the house, leaving Margaret with a hairline gash on her throat, but still alive. So Margaret, took her son and beat a hasty retreat back to her old marital home.
Mm-hmm.
Henry was out looking for revenge, so he went to visit his brother to get some advice. And his brother was like, holy crap, holding a knife at somebody's throat is, a scary, scary story. So he tried to beg Bernard to go to the police. But, Henry was just not having any of it. And he was this was not something that he was going to let lie.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned earlier, Aberdeen is located between two rivers. And after he left his brother, who worked in the centre of town, he then jumped on a bus to the Bridge of Dawn, which is where his brother stayed. And his brother had a gun cabinet.
But the brother was still in town.
His brother was still in town. His brother was totally unaware of what he was doing at that point.
Okay.
His brother had a gun cabinet. Henry basically broke into it and took his shotgun. And that's when he jumped on the number 14 bus to Jackson Terrace, which is one of these, tenement, granite tenements in the middle of town. And basically burst in.
But his wife, she was gone at that point.
No. He went back to
the husband's house.
the husband's house. Yeah.
Oh,
Because
okay.
she'd gone back to the old
but
marital home.
Okay, so he knew she went back to her husband.
Yes.
Okay.
That was his first thought. So the murder was very fast and very ugly. Henry burst into the flat. Poor old Georgina, she was still there, and she tried to stop him, screaming out, "Stop, you can't come in here." And Thomas, the husband, came out of the kitchen as if to say, "What the fuck is going on?" And Burnett just shot him in the head and left him for dead. He then proceeded to the kitchen where Margaret had been watching TV with the kids, and he dragged her out of the building.
Outside?
Yeah, he took her right outside of the house, and this is when it turns into Hollywood. This is when it turns into a Tarantino movie, because he makes his way down to the petrol station on Seaforth Road, which was right down by the beach, and demanded, just from some random dude who happened to be filling his car up, for his car. Obviously, this guy didn't know who the hell he was, so tried to stop him because...
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. You don't have people wandering around about the streets with a gun. That's just weird. And but still, the guy saw reason and just said, okay, have the car. So he dragged Margaret into the car, and that was it. He left Aberdeen. He was heading for places north. He headed up to Peterhead. Of course, nobody actually ever pronounces it Peterhead. What's it called, Cedric? Peterhead, yeah. But thankfully, the Rozzers caught them near Ellen.
Okay.
And just as they were kind of like arresting him, Burnett said, "I gave him both barrels. He must be dead."
Yes.
Which is, never a good thing to say when you're being arrested.
Yeah, but if he shot the guy twice in the head, there's really no way to deny it.
No. I mean, he shot the guy with two witnesses,
Yeah, also twice. It's not an accident. He can't say, it just went off. If you shoot him twice, you shoot him twice.
Mm-hmm. So on the 12th of July, Burnett was charged with capital murder. And he entered a plea of not guilty, unsurprisingly.
Based on what? Well, that makes no sense.
Under the law, because Henry had used a shotgun, it was deemed to be a capital offence rather than a crime of passion. He went over into the Bridge of Dawn and broke in to steal the gun, which was all deemed to be premeditated. He also was charged with assaulting Margaret because he held a knife to her throat. And I was also charged with assaulting the owner of the car that he stole. And the sheriff set the date for a trial of the 23rd of July. The trial itself was almost as swift as the murder. It only lasted 2 days, which seems kind of quick for a murder trial.
But he was caught with the gun, presumably. Yeah. They had shot a guy twice in the head and there were witnesses. Yeah. What else do you want?
Yeah, I know. The main highlight of the trial was when Matilda Burnett, Henry's mother, broke down on the stand when she was giving testimony on his behalf, which distressed Henry no end. And who likes to see their mother in tears anyway? She composed herself and said, "Henry, it's okay, my loon, I'm okay." Rather unsurprisingly, the main focus of the defence was Henry's mental state. The brush with the mental institution after he had the attempted suicide attempt and threatening his two sisters with a knife.
That makes him a psycho more than Rooney, but...
Well, I mean, he had tried to take his own life. He had 2 doctors testifying that Burnett was not in his right mind and he had diminished responsibility.
Okay.
So both deemed him unsound at the time of the murder, and one dubbed him a psychopath.
Well, yeah, he clearly is.
And at the times it was, and at times wasn't capable of making rational decisions. The other doctor had done a brainwave test on him, which highlighted abnormalities. This is very 1960s language.
Brainwave test.
It's almost like saying he was a wee bit touched in the head, Yeah,
but at the same time, when they say that he wasn't in his right mind when he decided to commit murder, you never are anyway.
Yeah.
You can't say, he was totally normal, totally fine. It just happened to kill people. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's not really a defense to turn it upside down and say, oh, he killed people because he wasn't in his right mind. Of course he wasn't.
It didn't matter what the doctor said anyway, because sadly the defence failed and Burnett was sentenced to hang. The jury was out for a whole 25 minutes.
Fast.
That is very fast. It isn't really surprising given, as I say, Burnett shot this poor guy in front of 2 witnesses. So the defence failed and the diminished responsibility, and the hanging was scheduled to take place the following month.
Wow,
So,
that's quick.
Yeah, there is no hanging around. I can't believe I just said that. Yeah, it is swift justice. There's none of the
appeals and
the
appeals
lingering
and
that you get in the States. I've been on death row for
30 years
6 years. Yeah. And what of Margaret? Well, she stood by Burnett the whole time. She told the press she had become closer to Henry because her husband was at sea, and that she never knew what the consequences of the whole outcome was going to be, but she still loved Burnett.
Okay.
It seemed that many felt that Burnett shouldn't be facing the hangman's noose. Everybody seemed to love Henry. And once he was sentenced, he even found an ally in an unexpected place. Thomas's mother, the victim, Jeanie, even petitioned the Scots office for clemency. She didn't see the point in Burnett's life ending just because her son was dead. And she says, I can find it in my heart to forgive Henry Burnett. Which is very courageous of her, because I'm not so sure I would be able to do the same thing. So there was a public petition set up, and they even, sent a telegram to Liz Windsor to see what she would say, but she couldn't get involved, so it all fell on deaf ears. And sadly, in Craig Inch's prison, overlooking the River Dee, the other side of the other river in Aberdeen, Henry was hung at 8 a.m. on the 15th of August with 200 sombre people outside the prison walls. He was buried in the unmarked grave within Craig Inch's walls, but the prison's actually now closed, and he was moved in a private crematorium where they cremated him, and he's been buried. So, as I said at the top, Henry's death was the last capital case in Scotland. A couple of dudes in England hold the honour of being the last hung in the UK the following year. They shot a friend over money. I think the biggest thing that pushed through the ending of capital punishment in the UK was the case of Timothy Evans, who was accused of murdering his wife and daughter. It was later discovered that the downstairs neighbour, John Christie, the serial killer, was in fact the murderer. But it was too late because Timothy Evans had been hung.
Oh, I see.
It was for something he hadn't done. And if, as ever, we're recommending something to watch, I would say 10 Rillington Place with Dickie Attenborough playing Christie is a fascinating film. Really, really, really good film. Really horrible serial killer. We've listened to a series about him. He's a nasty bastard. But anyway, I can't talk too much about him. He's a Londoner, so he's not concerned with our podcast. So there you go. And do you remember Craig Inch's prison, Cedric?
Is it the one that's above the A90?
No, it's the one that overlooks the river, that overlooks Riverside Drive.
Yeah, from the other side.
In the office
where
I met you, in fact.
Yes.
So it was, in fact,
across the river from the office, yes.
Exactly, very close to us. And that's why I picked it. I thought, oh, wow, I didn't know that the last case was so close to where we met. And I'm going to end with Scott's word of the episode. And I'll sign off the podcast every episode with a wee Scots word to help you understand the unique and crazy thing that is the Scots language. And for the first time, it's a twofer. You've heard the word coming from Henry's mother in the dock. Loon, that's a man in the northeast of Scotland. And Quine is a woman. So until next time, my true crime loons and quines, mind your back.